Good day, everyone, and thanks for joining the Mobilizing SAP Plant Maintenance at Scale. Well, it's Sean and I today that will be, hosting, and thank you so much. I know it's the quarter end, right? And some of us joining us is such a privilege to be sharing some insights together. For the attendees today, we are more than happy to answer any questions, and feel free to pop it back in the chat. While we kick things off, right? Quick question for you, Sean. Is it one of those online meetings where we're wearing a nice top but shorts underneath?
Oh no, I dressed up for the occasion.
Yeah,
Joel.
you did.
Head on.
All right. So let's talk about the takeaways for today, right? Three key takeaways as you're joining us for this session. Number one is how do we bridge the common gap, right, between planning and field execution in SAP plant maintenance? We see a lot of fantastic digital plans, but when it comes to the field execution itself, it's a different reality, right? We see paper, we see what's being recorded, not aligned towards the plan. So with Sean, we're going to learn a bit about how we can bridge that common gap. Number two, right, Sean comes with a lot of fantastic experience across multiple industries and projects, and he will share with you real-world experience in EAM best practices. And number three, from a process point of view, what end-to-end plant maintenance can look like in practice. For the speakers today, I'll do a quick introduction about myself. I am the regional sales manager for Neptune Software. Prior to joining Neptune, I was 6 years with SAP. So the whole topic around SAP has been something close to my heart and as part of my career. I'll hand it over to Sean for a quick introduction of himself.
Yeah, hi team and everybody. I'm Sean Dunning. I work with Accenture and I in the functional lead for a lot of asset management and particularly Blueworx side of things. So I help people put the Neptune and Blueworx solution into their SAP instance, and then the go-to 0800 help type caller when you're needing assistance or you're wanting to understand something. Thanks, Joel.
Thanks, Sean. So just to set the context a little bit about Neptune Software, right? So that the folks here can get a rough idea of who we are and how this partnership with Accenture came about. So Neptune Software is a SAP-native and certified platform with about 5 million global active users across 53 countries, founded in Norway. And we are in the business of end-to-end business process orchestration to enable agentic AI transformation for enterprises. With that, common challenges, obviously, we face today are disparate landscape, best-of-breed systems, and still a convolution of different screens and user experiences, right? So to drive that end-to-end harmonized and unified business process, we are in the business of driving this harmonized system of work across different systems of engagement, systems of record, systems of operation, and even handheld devices, POS systems. So this is the vision of Neptune. And with that, the flexibility and the interoperability of the platform has allowed us to gain the trust of Accenture to come up with the set of different industry solutions that we have today. And in particular, we'll be focusing on Blueworx by Accenture around the aspect of EAM. So without further ado, I have my first questions coming up for Sean. So Sean, quick question here. What got you into enterprise asset management in the first place, right? I mean, there's so many different functional areas of expertise. You must have at some point in your life decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to pick this one. So like why EAM and what got you, interested to stay on it all the way, right, for 3 decades?
Yeah, thanks, Joel. And perfect timing. We've got a wonderful slide that probably resonates with a lot of people in the asset management space. A long time ago, many moons ago, my asset management journey kind of initiated by when I was working on the business side, a large-scale inventory process to measure and draw and get dimensions of a lot of assets. We engaged up to 40 engineers at some point out there doing paper forms. And we even went to the degree where our paper forms were waterproof paper forms in order to be able to capture this information, rain, hail, or shine. What resonated with me is that as a person that needed that information, the time frame between that inventory being collected and then receiving that information back in a format where we could do something with was quite a lengthy process. It required manual interventions, people inputting data into a database. We had photography film being developed, printed, scanned, and digitized in order to get it all into one place. So it was quite a major undertaking, and perhaps before even mobility really existed, that was the tipping point. And a lot of us thought, my gosh, there's got to be a better way to capture data at the source, at the time, and then have that in our fingertips at a rapid pace. And so Blueworx is now utilizing a lot of the functionality that perhaps came from some of those client ideas and the way clients want to capture information, and has enabled a lot of what we do today. So why did I start in asset management? It started with a reasonably large room filled with paper and going, how do we have a better day? How do we do this better? And I've spent the last 20 to 25 years focusing in the asset management space and looking at how mobility and how asset managed data can be realized and mobilized. Yeah. Thanks, John.
Yeah, that's a great answer from you, right? I can imagine to the point we need waterproof forms, and that stacks of paper probably needs a warehouse by its own. That amount of paper, right? So for the folks today, we're going to talk a little bit about Blueworx so they get a sense of what this mobility enablement is all about, right? If you could just give us a bit of view of what Blueworx does, that will kind of help us set the context.
Yeah, sure. So Blueworx in itself, I've always likened it as enabler or an extension of your SAP plant maintenance or enterprise asset management solution. And together with the Neptune platform and Blueworx, it mobilizes all of that data, and it brings near real-time data to the fingertips of our engineers and our technicians. And they can also have that data whether they are online or offline or in patchy sort of coverage areas. We can design the solution for each of our people using it that is targeted, is specific to their requirements, and so they have the confidence that what they need to do their job is available to them no matter where they are. And so that's the core. It really is mobilizing plant maintenance and giving field teams, engineers, access to that data. And that's whether that's technical objects, work orders, notifications, photography, plans and drawings that can all be pulled down and made available to them.
Thanks, Sean. So for the clients that you see running SAP plant maintenance today, when do you see things often breaking down, right? Especially in a lot of the clients that you advise. What are some of these common things that, kind of break down, either from a process point of view or asset point of view?
Yeah, common areas, I guess, is that disconnect, and especially in today's world where we almost have an expectation that we have real-time data, have access to that data. And if I can bring up a slide number 3 for us here, it kind of gives you a bit of a hint of what's available to people, and go, the breakdown is you've got field teams out there wanting to do the right thing. You're wanting to get information out to them. You don't want to have to bring them back to the office to collect new information to then go out and have the right tools and the right information, the right drawings and specifications. And so the key, I guess, this is in saying you've got your engineers out there wanting to do stuff, and they have immediate access to their work program via a calendar. They have geospatial reference points. They can view things on a map. They have access to materials and spare parts. They can link that to their teams. They can get their supporting plans, drawings, and imagery. And also that work clearance. Do permits need to be released in order to get access to a restricted site? All of that stuff is sort of available. So it removes the blockers and brings that rich data straight to the people that need it.
That makes sense. And, you know, Sean, in our experience working together, right, there's so many different stories that were really interesting, right? And I thought it would be great, you know, if you could share one of these stories that really is kind of stuck in your mind, right, when it comes to your career so far doing the EAM space. What would be one very interesting story that you would share?
Yeah, sure, sure, Joel. I'm going to show you a bit of a demo, if we can bring up my screen, and to give you an example of some of the things that we discover and go. The scenario here is the engineer is on site, perhaps doing a particular planned job. Now, while they're on site, they have access to all of the information for that particular job. But in transit, they notice something else is wrong. Now, that something else might be completely unrelated to the work that they're going there to do. But the power of the Neptune and the Blueworx platforms is they can pull up that piece of equipment or that function location, and they can review key aspects of that, and then choose to create a notification or a work order as an emergency piece of work if they wish to. And so right here we've got, this is what we call our Blueworx landing page. It's the home page that most engineers will see, and they've got a section for their work orders and their notifications and their assets. But in this situation, I'm just going to go straight to the map and take you to a place. And so, of course, I'm based in New Zealand, so you're going to get a New Zealand example, and we're going to head on our way down to Dunedin here. Now, if I was using a mobile device, I could go, what's my location? And it would take me straight to where I was currently parked. But here's my job, and it's a substation. And if I quickly turn on our satellite view, you'll see here that I've got a polygon around a substation, and I've come here to do some work. And while I'm doing that work, I've noticed as I drove out of the gate, a particular power pole didn't look too great. And I can search for that power pole, and I can bring that power pole up and go straight away. I can create a notification, or I can create a field order. I can go to that object. I can look at the asset hierarchy and see how it's placed in the hierarchy of the asset. I can look at the key characteristics. So from here, I know that the pole base should be 200, and it's a pine pole. And so it's starting to give the engineer those key snippets of information around what's needed here. Across here, I've also got immediate access to documents. And so I can open my set document, and you can't see it here because it's on a different screen, but I can see a lovely picture of a pole with a light bulb on it. So to give you an idea, saying totally unrelated to the job I'm there to, but I have access to this information. I don't need to be a pole engineer. I have a suspicion something's not quite right with a particular pole. I can raise a notification or trigger a workflow to get others connected into this particular piece of work. And likewise, measurement points and documents, we can take readings and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, the scenario here, Joel, is around people out there going to do their day-to-day work and seeing something that perhaps doesn't look right. They don't necessarily be an expert in that thing that doesn't look right, but they have the tools to raise that, particularly in today's market where health and safety is, one of those most important things for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? I mean, most of the time when we look at technology investments, we're thinking in terms of just having some analytics to analyze the data, right? But often the times we miss the part of capturing that data. And when it comes to what happens on the field, that's where people are needed to capture that data, right? And we need to give them the tools to then do that, right? It's interesting because prior to this session itself, just a few weeks ago when I was on a flight, I was looking at the movie around was it a Pipe River mine disaster in New Zealand? So, some of this health and safety things and how having that means and tools to capture that data could prevent certain disasters, right? I can imagine from health and safety. So, yeah, that's a great takeaway because beyond extending the asset life, beyond preventing downtime, there's also a human element to this to protect people, as part of this transformation that you do. Question now with regards to process change, right? So I'm pretty certain that when it comes to process transformation, there's always an element of change management, right? And also there is a need to align towards how the SAP system is designed. So typically when you go on a topic around mobility, how do you advise your clients around understanding their as-is process and then designing the future desired state, right? How do you typically approach that?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And so process design is often something that comes in a bit late in the piece. And I've been a huge advocate in saying actually your process design, bringing the engineers and the key people that do this business and know these processes into the room and making sure we capture their requirements up front. And of course, when looking at mobility and the likes of the Blueworx system, it's immediately going to make change transformation for any business because you're digitizing what is typically a manual or a paper-based process or something that's been passed from one person to the next before it gets realized. And you're shifting into a digital by default, a capture at source, and not have to have second, third-party hands associated to that. And I liken that to functionality that Blueworx has around inspections and go, what's a scenario where a checklist or a pre-start or something that a company is trying to do that has a lot of paperwork involved in it, and saying health and safety again becomes a factor and going, in order to switch this factory on and in order to press that green light and start manufacturing, we have to do a really complex pre-start checklist. And they grab their clipboard and off they go, and they tick everything off, and they might take readings and they might take values. And what we can do in the Blueworx front is we can create dynamic and conditional-based smart forms that can actually capture that data and help them with their pre-start checklists and stuff like that, or undertaking the condition assessment. And so I got an example here if you want to see another one, Joel, around what we do for a pre-start.
Yeah.
And if we jump back across to my screen, it'd be great. So again, back at the landing page, and what we're going to do here is I've got a complex truck, and in order to jump into the truck, we're going to do a pre-start check, and that's just going to ask a series of different questions. And so often, and when we do a pre-start, it may not be typically aligned to a work order, and so we're doing what we call an ad hoc or an asset-based inspection. And so I can go into my assets and look for my assets, and I'm going to search for my truck, and here it is here. I'm gonna try and start this truck, the MAN HX60 4x4 cargo, with a winch, because you've got to have a winch. And right, and so immediately we've got the asset rich data. And so again, we've got the key, what we call the header information. We know the hierarchy and where that is sitting within the technical object structure, and I've got key characteristics that I might want to refer to, and I can carry on and go what's its base location, measurement points, and whatnot. But inspections is what we're here to talk about this time, and saying in order to turn the key on and start this truck and drive away, we have a policy that we undertake a pre-start check. And so we've built an inspection type form that enables or digitizes that manual check and captures the person that did it and the key data. Now, the key thing about a lot of inspections is the person undertaking the inspection doesn't necessarily know what's going to happen to that data or what triggers or events are initiated from that data. And it's in this case here, it's just a basic wizard type form, and saying I can click on that and it can give me instructional information and checklists, pick list, radio buttons, and the business can configure and build all of these smart inspections, and they can pick values of yes or no and work their way through each of the different questions. And you can embed imagery and instructions and technical drawings into all of this as you wish. Now, depending on how you configure this, in this case, we've got red flags, meaning every question must be answered in order to finalize the pre-start. But that's all configurable. Some of these results may land themselves as a measurement point or a measurement document against a point. It could update a characteristic. It could generate a notification, fully configurable behind the scenes. And I guess that's the power and the smarts of a component of Blueworx, is that's very comprehensive, dynamic, smart forms type application for all inspections.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So shifting from the functional and change management aspect of this transformation, right? I'm keen to kind of hear your perspective, whereby from a technology standpoint, if we really look at most of the systems of records in the market, right? They are based on web-based technologies. You got your Java, you got your C#, whatever, right? But SAP by itself is something that's so proprietary. It's built on ABAP. You got CDS views, you got BAPIs, is a world of its own. So how does the Blueworx solution, right, having built on Neptune, allow us to then serve as a natural extension to the SAP system, right, which is traditionally known as a black box to integrate with and extend point? So maybe you can share some thoughts around that.
Yeah, that's a good question to understand the architecture of all of this and go, what's the difference between the Neptune product and Blueworx versus other applications? And I go that I guess the key component is the Neptune platform provides the base architecture. It provides all of the security controls and the mechanisms to make things happen, and then Blueworx is an application that's installed on top of the Neptune application. But the key thing I'd like to draw on here is Neptune is a SAP certified application, and it sits inside the SAP landscape. It's not a third-party bolt-on that sits somewhere else and we replicate data in order to present it on Blueworx. It's part of the core SAP instance. And so utilizing Blueworx with Neptune, it's almost like the perfect handshake in saying it has direct access to the plant maintenance data, and it's utilizing SAP standard BAPIs and function modules in order to fetch that data and provision it for our engineers and users. And there's no black box or no massive replication of data, and trying to keep all of those things in sync as to what old mobile technology used to do in order to try and line those things up. So that's, I guess that's the base architecture of all of this, and saying it's good partnership there.
Yeah, absolutely right. So it's really one of the few, and I haven't heard of any other one so far that's, where it allows us to be installed inside the NetWeaver stack itself of SAP system, right?
Yeah.
So most options out there in the market are probably installed externally, right? As compared to Neptune and Blueworx approach in this case. So we have some time left for questions and answers. But prior to that, right, I thought that Sean would like to invite you to just share one last story, right? Because I love the experience that you have. If you really think about your career, right? I mean, deployment, implementation, doing things on time, successful handover, these are part of the job, right? But there is also an element to it whereby you felt that the transformation made a difference, right? Whether for society or the company or the employees, right? What would be one? And if you feel, if you're not allowed to say the customer name, that's fine. You can just share the, industry or the nature of the company. But what would be one, story like that you say that, it's a career well spent?
Wow. One thing, I have to tell you a story, and it's quite recent. If anybody knows me, I have been working in the power industry a fair bit lately, and as my place at home, I'm based in the Waikato in the North Island, to be honest, not in Dunedin, as you just saw. I've got a relatively long driveway, and there's a bit of power cables that run past our driveway, and I happen to do a bit of work for this company, and their engineers and their technicians were parked up blocking my driveway one day doing some work. And so I thought, oh, this is a pretty exciting thing that's happening on my driveway. So I went down and had a chat to them, and one of them pulled out his phone, and sure enough, there he is using Blueworx, and it was quite satisfying. He didn't know who I was at that point. But yeah, it was a real turning point of saying, oh gosh, the things that we do, and how we often work behind the scenes to enable stuff, and to see it realized without even sort of pushing hard to notice that is a real highlight, I guess. Yeah,
absolutely. That's such a great story. And like us being in the SAP ecosystem, sometimes when we do these projects and you see them actually using the work that we have recommended, we have advised, super satisfying, right? So okay, I shall wrap it up with a bit of a call to action, actually. So let me just flash up the slide around the call to action. Okay, so next slide. All right. So for the folks today, once again, thanks for joining us. Right after this, we'll answer some of the questions that you guys have raised. But for the attendees in this call, on a first come first served basis, we're offering the opportunity for the man Sean himself, right, to do a mobility readiness assessment for asset maintenance, right? So what he will do is he will help you benchmark your maturity versus what could potentially be best in class within your industry. He will help you define the as-is and the future state vision, and he will guide you along the steps ahead to help you better plan your transformation. So if you scan the QR code, it will lead to my email, or alternatively, just take note of my email. Send me an email and I will bridge you to Sean. All right, so now it's Q&A time. We have about 14 minutes left on Q&A. If I can invite for the first question to pop up. Let's see what questions we have. Okay, so the first question we have is, what is the average deployment time when it comes to Blueworx implementation? And what happens as part of the deployment journey? So question for you, Sean.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I can say, start with, it depends. No, just kidding. A typical deployment, and so I put a caveat on this and go, a typical deployment out of the box solution with no customer customizations. And so we're doing a install, a functional configure and go live. Now, typically this would be on a 3-tier client, so a dev, test, production environment, and we would typically estimate a 10 to 15 week from start to finish time period. The product, including the Neptune product and the Blueworx install, is designed to be a rapid build, and so we're looking to try and improve that and have people operational at a relatively quick pace. Now, if I break that down and go, what's in that 10 to 15 weeks? We can typically have your development client and the technology side of things up and going relatively fast pace. And so, that could be a week to 10 days, and you'll have an operational web view similar to what you saw in this demo, running Blueworx on your development system. The part that takes a little bit more time, especially for a new client, somebody that perhaps doesn't have mobility or doesn't have Blueworx, is how do we then configure it? How do we want the screens to display? How do we want Blueworx to function? How do we align Blueworx with your business processes and your business models? And that takes a little bit of time. Blueworx is highly customizable, so we can configure the behavior of the screens and how Blueworx functions to a degree. And we spend a lot of time in workshops trying to understand process in order to determine what configuration items we're going to turn on or turn off, or how we want it to behave. And so that takes a little bit of time. And the second part is every SAP instance and every client installs these things in different environments. And so security becomes the next biggest thing, and saying, how do we get this information through to Blueworx, which is typically outside of their internal network. And so you've got firewalls and proxies and all sorts of things, and single sign-on and authentication to set up, and then deployment of an iOS or an Android app. Those two things, configuration and security, are probably the biggest parts of the puzzle. And I'd like to say the rest of it is a piece of cake. That's typically it. A 10 to 15 week period. If people find something that they do that Blueworx doesn't quite handle it, that's typical typical scenario. If you're going to customize SAP, it'll cost you a bit more and a bit more time. Blueworx is no different in that front. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great answer, right? Because I mean, to get a solution just up and running, in a week we can easily do it, right? But it's the consulting, the design, and the process advisory, right? That is what clients are paying for, right? To get the best practice and the best class when it comes to mobility. So, second questions, if we can invite it to be displayed. What else do we have as a question? Okay. So it appears here it's more related to connectivity, right? So the question here from the audience is, how can we ensure offline data synchronization back to SAP when it comes back online? So I presume that, um, while this SAP system is online, data is still moving and updating itself. And then you are probably having a offline data updated maybe 3 days ago. So now everything comes back online. How do we ensure seamless synchronization across these different timestamps?
Yeah, that's another good question, and it's. I guess that's without letting too much out of the bag. It's the power of what Neptune and Blueworx does. Is it looks after a lot of this handshaking offline to offline and offline to online and vice versa. And so the typical rule is if no changes have been made, it's all well and good, happy families, that the data will come back from its offline state and find its way back to the SAP system. There's a number of measures that we have in place around out of sync data or something that's not quite right. It will present itself to the user. And in our later versions of Blueworx, it also presents itself to the administrators, so they can see what's happening on users' devices if they've been presented with anything that needs to be resolved. From typically the work orders and notifications, updates to technical objects, it's all synchronous, and so we don't have a lot of conflicts in the synchronization. It's relatively how to say it. A lot of the data that we're changing often isn't changed at a high rate, and so when Blueworx comes in and uploads an inspection, or if a work order is signed off, it's generally in the state that they left it with. But of course, if something is stale, you've taken Blueworx offline for a month or two and you've come back and changed something, we can record that and make a prompt for a manual decision of whether that overwrites or is ignored. Yeah.
That makes sense. Maybe if I can just invite you to give like one example, maybe like truck driver or something like that, right? Where frequently in that scenario, there's a lot of connectivity issues. That would be another way for maybe the folks that are not entirely in the EAM space, or see a lot of these challenges in their day-to-day, right? For the audience here to gain a better idea of what the challenges are.
Yeah, from a data conflict side of things, probably the main one we would see is a work order has been sent out to an engineer, and they do something to that work order. In the meantime, a planner has completed that work order or shifted it somewhere else and shut it down. And so Blueworx can only do stuff in accordance to the SAP rules. And so we all know if a work order has been technically completed, you can no longer change it. And so if then Blueworx comes along and syncs a change to that work order, it's going to bounce back and say, no, I can't do that because the work order's been completed. It's locked. Now, the user will get that message on their outbox and saying the work order can't be changed. The administrators of Blueworx will see that in the sync logs, and then the decision point is saying, well, do you reverse that completion in order to capture that data, or do we ignore that and remove it from their device? And so That's probably the most common one. The other ones are less common because they're more in line to not staging a conflict, if that makes any sense. Yeah, but yeah, Blueworx has to comply to the rules of what governs SAP, and so if something gets locked, then Blueworx has to adhere to that lock. We occasionally get somebody in SAP has got the record open, and so they put a temporary lock on an object. Blueworx tries to change it from a sync, and it'll just sit in the user's outbox and wait. And go, so it's locked at the moment, we'll try again later. Yeah, and then it'll eventually go through.
Yeah, that's a fantastic response, right? Because elaborating on earlier questions also and answers, architectural integration is one thing, right? But to also be able to integrate with the rules that have already been set out in SAP system, and then extending upon that, right? It's something key to ensure the right governance are in place. All right, so 12:41 p.m. Singapore time. We have 4 minutes to go. I will, kind of wrap things up with a closing, and I'll invite everyone to reach out to us post this webinar. So in closing, I like to leave everyone with this key takeaway, right? Maintenance excellence isn't about deploying another application. It's about eliminating the gap between planning and execution, as what Sean has shared today. And when that gap closes, reliability improves, compliance strengthens, productivity rises, and your SAP investment works harder. So that's the opportunity we have at hand here. So once again, thank you so much for joining Sean and I. Sean is in New Zealand. Myself is based in Singapore. So we are two slightly different time zones. No matter where you are, we are here for you. All right. So yeah, maybe Sean, if you have any last words for the audience before we close the session off.
There's just one question in the chat that's popped up, which is sparked my interest, and go.
Yeah.
Is the mobile application a Fiori application? Which is the first question, and I've had that in my notes to say, but it's not an exact Fiori application, but it uses the SAP UI5 libraries, and so we can render and make the look and feel, make it look like Fiori. And so from an acceptance perspective, if you've got Fiori users as they step into the Blueworx space, it's the same UI5 library that Fiori is using, and so tiles will render in the same format, questions and forms and all of that sort of stuff look and feel the same. And the second part was, do users have to be a named SAP user? And the answer to that is yes. Yeah. If we're using Blueworx, they have to be an SAP user in order to be a Blueworx user. Yeah. So they consume the single license.
All right. I believe we also have two other questions with regarding comparison with SAP FSM, and also some question around SAM. Well, I would say in the according to the broadcasted time, we will have to drop. But if the audience are okay, could you please email to the call to action business email? We'll definitely make sure that we get this responded within today. That's all right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So once again, thanks everyone. Such a lovely time. I hope to be able to connect with you in person or in a web call, right? For the audience over here. And Sean, once again, thank you for sharing your insight. That means a lot to us.
No worries. Thank you for your time, Joel. It's been great to talk to you.